Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Melissa Hosick. I'm the Adult Programming Librarian at the East Brunswick Public Library. Thank you for joining us for this virtual author talk, actually with a few of my other libraries nearby. We would like to thank the Elizabeth Public Library, Matawan Aberdeen Public Library, New Brunswick Public Library, and the Old Bridge Public Library for co-sponsoring tonight. So we have a great group of Central New Jersey libraries, and we have people probably from all over the world. This program is funded by the East Brunswick Friends of the Library. If you'd like to know more about them, I will put their information in the chat. So without further ado, let's talk about our presenter for the evening. A New York Times bestselling author, Jennifer Keeshan Armstrong has written 7 pop culture history books, including Seinfeldia, When Women Invented Television. That one looks really interesting to me. It's on my to-read list. Mary and Lou and Rhoda and Ted. And the one we're going to be talking about this evening, Sex and the City and Us. Her work appears in many publications, including BBC Culture, the New York Times Book Review, Vice, New York Magazine, and Billboard. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you for having me. I don't even think we fully planned when we were planning this event that it would be the day before the reboot launches, but it happened that way. So I've been very immersed in Sex and the City today, especially, but this week and the past couple weeks, because there's lots of attention on this reboot and everyone's really excited about it. So I think it'll be really fun to look back at the original Sex and the City series and kind of what it did for television, what it did for women on television, and how important it was. I've been doing these interviews because people are writing pieces about the reboot coming, and people call me to talk about what does it all mean. And it's fascinating because, to me, it doesn't seem like that long ago. This is what, happens when you get older. But 17 years ago that the show went off the air. And when I start explaining, especially to younger people, like why this was such a big deal, I realized just how different things were, especially when it started, which was 1999. And into the 2000s even, it's just, you have to explain that HBO, when this show started, was really not on the map in terms of like watching television on it. People tended to watch movies or boxing specials for the most part on HBO at that time. We didn't have streaming, obviously. Cable was barely a thing in itself. We had mostly network television, and it all looked pretty similar. And, the depictions of women especially changed enormously with the advent of Sex and the City, and especially it being on HBO, kind of that combination of things made this into a powder keg of just change. And now there's so many more shows depicting women, period, centering women. Now we have shows that center different kinds of women, mind-bogglingly enough. And this show paved the way for that. But also there have been a lot of improvements essentially on that model since, because we have more diverse voices on those shows. We have women writing shows, writing their own content and starring in it. There's all of this stuff that has happened, but Sex and the City came before that at a time when none of this was happening. So we will get into all of that. And what I'm going to do is show you a series of clips and talk about each one after I show it, because I feel like that is the best way to discuss these TV shows that we all love, is to actually see bits of them. So here's the first. Okay. So, okay. So I think this is the only show that I've ever discussed where I actually show the opening credits. It's fun to see, first of all, I think, for any of us who were actually fans of the show, right? It gives you just that hit of nostalgia. But I also wanted to talk about these credits because they're iconic, first of all, and not every credit sequence is iconic in and of itself. But it actually, there is a reason that's iconic, and it shows kind of like what was in store right away. Like, this doesn't look like a lot of opening credits that we've seen before, though it plays on opening credits for shows like, I think especially the Mary Tyler Moore Show, if you want to go back to the 70s. And I wrote a book about the Mary Tyler Moore Show, which is another like truly iconic opening credits. And that, I can tell you that that was actually on their minds when they were creating these credits. They actually referenced both that and even the Dick Van Dyke Show, which is such a funny one, but obviously not as thematically resonant, but had a great credit sequence where he, tripped over an ottoman in their living room in it. And, they kind of combined those two ideas essentially of the woman in the city, right? Kind of like in her life, walking, you see her and you immediately think like, oh, she seems really glamorous. I kind of want to be her. And also that kind of other aspect of the Dick Van Dykeness where, she has this, bus come by and splash her with the water, which that in itself, I feel like people reference all the time now. It's like, if that happens to you, you can say like, oh, I had this Sex in the City moment where this bus came by and splashed me with the water. And it's doing so much here because it shows how glamorous and cool she is, but it also kind of essentially undercuts her at the end and says like, this isn't as glamorous as it seems. Even it's her own, picture on the bus passing her by and it splashes her. And it's, shows kind of what the series is going to be, which is it certainly glamorizes her life. And it is about how this woman is on her own in the city. And it's about how, we kind of all want to be her. And that's something that's really significant. But it also kind of says like, but we're not going to necessarily just show you the glamorous side. We're not just going to glamorize her all the time. She is flawed herself, which is something that lots of people like to discuss. And, she will, she's not always going to win. She's not always going to be perfect. A fun behind the scenes fact about this credit sequence, and also something that is indicative of how this show kind of changed literally the look of television too, is that when they were first putting it together, they still, still figuring out the show a little bit. And the creator, Darren Star, he had created Beverly Hills 90210 and Melrose Place. And so he came from big hits on traditional network television and sort of had that sensibility, at least visually, coming into it, but he wanted to do something different. He wanted to make it look more like a movie, which was what HBO wanted in its series as well. And so those meshed really well, those goals, but he didn't necessarily have the fashion vision that this show would eventually have from its costume designer, Patricia Field, who was just incredible. And her clothing here changes everything in fashion, in television, everywhere. But Darren really he had envisioned her more in like a business suit type of thing, which is crazy to think about now. But, he's coming from Melrose Place. So I feel like if you think about that, it kind of makes sense. He's imagining like Heather Locklear in Melrose Place, who is like the epitome of 90s glam, right? And Patricia Field, because she's a visionary and she's super punk rock, was like, no, I have this skirt that I got famously for $5 in a thrift store. And I want to put her in that. And Sarah Jessica Parker, who, came to the role with a lot of fashion sense. She had a pretty advanced sense of fashion before this. they both kind of agreed this is what she should be wearing. And so Darren listened to them, and actually I think they shot it both ways. But Patricia Field's idea was that she would stand out, among other things. She would stand out among all the other people on the streets of New York. Your eye would go to her if she was wearing this kind of thing, as opposed to wearing what everyone else was wearing. And I think so much of this entire series is basically in this incredibly short clip. You see so much about where we're going in terms of the visual. Like, it looks like a beautiful movie. She's dressed different from how any other woman had dressed on television before. And she stands out, and it shows you how she's going to be glamorous, but also will fall and be flawed. And so there's a lot that went in here, and who knows if it was absolutely all masterminded or, you know, just kind of happened that way. But I think that these are all the reasons that this is such an iconic credit sequence. And from there, we're going to go to another one. And this is there we go. This is the ending of the pilot episode. Here we go.
So what have you been doing lately?
You mean besides going out every night?
Yeah, I mean, what do you do for work?
This is my work. I'm sort of a sexual anthropologist.
You mean like
No. I write a column called Sex and the City. Right now I'm researching an article about women who have sex like men. You know, they have sex and then afterwards they feel nothing.
but you're not like that.
Well, aren't you?
Not a drop, not even half a drop.
Wow. What's wrong with you?
I get it. You've never been in love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Suddenly I felt the wind knocked out of me. I wanted to crawl under the covers and go right to sleep. All right. Wait. Have you ever been in love?
Yeah, I'm so fucking lonely.
Okay, so that is the end of the pilot episode. And I like to show that for a couple of different reasons. And one is just that this, it kind of sets up the whole show. And in fact, this is the reason that Sarah Jessica Parker signed on to do the show. She told me this actual scene when she read it in the script. She was very on the fence and she wavered a lot. She actually pulled out a couple times and came back. And in fact, one of the final reasons she decided to sign on is because she did not think it was going to last more than one season. But so that's a funny thing. But she read this scene and really felt like this was where she could see the actual emotion, and especially that final shot, you know, the final couple lines in the shot of her kind of looking like she just got gut punched. And she felt like, okay, now I really understand this show. And I, you know, get where it's going, and it's emotional. It's not, there is this idea, you know, it's in the title, Sex and the City. But, you know, and she was very wary of the sex part. She famously said she would not do sex scenes. She would not do nudity, and didn't want it to get too raunchy just for the sake of being raunchy. And this really showed her that that's not what this was going to be, but it is at the time, again, 1999, showing that it's a very sort of modern romantic comedy, essentially. It's got the romantic comedy element. It's also got the sex element. I think there's definitely a through line, for instance, from something like When Harry Met Sally to this show, which is obviously much dirtier, but still it borrows that modern rom-com setup of like bantering about sex, being open about sex, even more so in this case. And it shows that this show is also a different kind of television show. I mean, it wasn't the first ever to do this, but it really did this well, which is it combined the emotional with the funny, it was funny and dirty, which we expected from something called Sex and the City that was a half-hour show. But it also had this emotional heft to it and this serialized element to it, which is like, we were very much involved in the stories. And this scene really shows that that's what we were going to get. And I know for somebody like me too, I watched it, when it aired on television the first time. And this was definitely the part that to me really got me. I wasn't as interested in just the sex talk, even though that is very, very important. And it did, incredible things in terms of advancing the conversations that we had about sex, the ways that women, I think, especially, straight cis women talked to each other about sex, which often we did not before the show. And the show really taught us to do that. And that's great. But the thing that, I think sometimes gets lost in the conversation is how truly good a show it was, so great a show it was in terms of the storytelling and the emotionality. So let's do another one. Actually, I am not going to go to one yet. I want to talk about it a little bit first. So the next one we're going to watch is, we're fast forwarding a lot in the show, but because I want to talk more about these kind of emotional components and the deeper components of the show. So this is where really toward the end of the series, it's getting much deeper into it, and Charlotte has met the love of her life, Harry, and after a failed marriage and some other things, she has met this guy who is the least expected guy for her. She's very sort of waspy and Park Avenue, that kind of thing, and that's what she's always gone for. And instead she ends up with her divorce lawyer from her first marriage, and he is this Jewish man, and she did not expect it at all. And she ends up, because she is Charlotte, she doesn't do anything halfway, she ends up converting and really going for it. And after he said he could not marry a woman who was not Jewish, she says, fine, I will convert. And she really just like goes full force. And this is a clip of her making him Shabbos dinner.
All this?
Well, since it's our first Shabbos together, I wanted to make it a little special.
A little? This is phenomenal.
I just need to get the candles and then we can say the bracha.
On a Silva now in the Philly bullpen. Roland pitches in at third. Cedeno squares, Bond's foul.
Oh, come on.
Sacrificing, he was trying to drop one down as though he was.
Honey, please turn that off. We're about to eat.
Good-looking play at all.
Smells incredible. And you made brisket. I cannot believe you made brisket.
Baruch
Bakal Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav V'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat. Good Shabbos.
Good Shabbos, sweetie. I cannot believe you made all this. What did I do to deserve you?
I feel the same way. I've been thinking about blessings, and you were such a blessing to me. Why is the TV on?
It's on mute.
Mute? Mute? We're having Shabbos dinner.
It's a big game, honey.
Turn it off. I want you to turn it off right this minute.
But it's...
Off now.
Let me just watch this one pitch.
I gave up Christ for you, and you can't give up the Mets?
It's going to be a long life if you keep that up. I gave up Christ for you. Take out the trash. I gave up Christ for you. Pick up your socks.
Do you have any idea how hard I worked to prepare this meal for you? I went to Zabar's every day this week. I had to make 30 matzo balls just to get 4 that were the right size and shape. Not to mention the months of studying and cramming like a maniac to convert to Judaism. And what have you done for me? Set the date. Set the date.
What are you talking about?
You said you couldn't marry me unless I was Jewish, and now I'm Jewish. Set the date.
You're acting crazy. Do you hear yourself?
Do you know how lucky you are to have me? Do you know how we look? Do you know what people out there think when they see us together, do you?
Yeah, I know what people are thinking. I just didn't think you were one of them.
Finally, it was Charlotte who was on mute.
I don't need this. I'm leaving. To think I bought a ring.
So that is very devastating. But I wanted to show that as an example, kind of with that one we saw from the first episode of how the show is so good at these relationship, emotional, these, really complicated emotional relationship stuff. And I really feel like this is the part that people forget about the show in the caricature of, oh, it's about these, glamorous swinging single ladies who wear shoes, which is kind of like what people think, I've literally had people say to me, oh, isn't that the show about shoes? Shoes are definitely a part of it, but they're not the only part. And, it really, especially as the show went on, it got so good at doing these really, great, deep relationships. That was something that I think is very, very impressive about the show is, especially at that time, you didn't see shows that kind of could do these long-term things. And it's something I don't think any of us expected when we first started with the show, but it's how it grew up essentially from just, oh, we talk about sex, we say dirty stuff, to, and have kind of like that man of the week feel, which we did for a while, into these really deep relationships that the women have with the men that they end up with. And this especially is so specific too. It's such, it's getting in there and having this conversation about this essentially interfaith. I feel like that's an old-fashioned word, but interfaith marriage and somebody converting for somebody else and what that means. And this, I also really believe that Charlotte is kind of an unsung character, to a large extent, underrated character on the show. I think she might have the biggest emotional arc of all 4 women. So this is I just always loved this whole storyline. I love her and Harry together. And this, especially this whole sequence in which she makes this dinner, is really lovely and devastating all at once. So let's do another one. And this is another one. I didn't realize, like, when I was thinking about this, I didn't realize I was doing like the downer moments in Sex and the City, but they're some of my favorites because that's actually what Sex and the City does best, is kind of, it can still be funny, it can still be fun and light, but it also really has a lot of heft to it. And so we're gonna look at another one of those. This is from my favorite episode, I think, which is called My Mother Bored Myself. And this is when Miranda's mother dies and her friends kind of help her through that. So we're gonna watch that now.
Meanwhile, in Philadelphia, Miranda realized she needed a shitty black bra to go with her shitty black dress.
Can I help you find something?
No, I'm looking for this in 36A in black.
You don't look like a 36A to me.
Well, I am. Excuse me, Lucille? I've been a 36A my whole life. I think I know what size I am.
Didn't think so. Try these.
There is no way that I'm a 34B.
Just try them. How's it going in there?
Fine. Everything's fine.
From the age of 14, Miranda had a strict no visitors policy in the dressing room.
Let's see how that's working out.
Although her mother never observed it, and neither did Lucille.
I just said that I didn't need any help.
Well, you say you don't want help, but you were picking out the wrong size. See, now this one fits you.
I think that I can adjust my bra straps by myself. Would you please get your hands off of my breasts?
I'm not being fresh. I think I know what's best.
No, you don't. I think that I know what's best for me.
Suddenly, Miranda realized she would never have a fight with her mother again.
I'm sorry. It's not you. My mother just died. And
Come here.
no, I'm fine. I'm
And there behind the curtain, when no one was looking, Miranda found a kind of support that actually fit her.
well, this is perfect. You were right. Thanks.
Cynthia Nixon is a national treasure. That's the first thing I want to say. But more to the point, you can tell that this is the part that I really love about Sex and the City, is this stuff. And this is a great example too of why the female writers who worked on the show were so important. This show had a male creator, Darren Star, and a male showrunner, Michael Patrick King. But all the women on the staff, or all the people on the staff, were women. And they actually, there's a bunch of this stuff in my book, but they were all single women in their 30s living in New York City while they were writing the show. And they really put their lives into the show. And they literally would like go out at night if they got home in time to actually do that from work, but they'd go out at night and they would, reconvene in the morning for work. They actually had a bus that, I guess it was a van. It was a van that picked them up in New York City because the studio that they shot at, Silver Cup, was in Queens. And so they had this van that would come pick the girls up in the city. They all called themselves girls. And as they got into the van, they would all talk about what happened to them the night before. And then they'd get to the studio and go to the writer's room and kind of like distill down that conversation for Michael Patrick King, who was running the show then. And from there, they would start to just put stuff on the whiteboard, and, that's stuff that would eventually end up in the show. So somebody has a bad date, it's going up, that's really interesting, it's going up there, any of that stuff. And they would even fight a lot. They'd have like, little arguments about is this right? Is that right? Did this person make the right decision? And a lot of times that stuff would go into those brunch scenes when they would really sort of have what I would call Socratic dialogues about, certain kinds of sex or relationship issues, all kinds of stuff. And they put it all in there. And I really feel like the female writers are the reason that this show resonated so much with so many women, because it really was women living that life and then putting their actual experiences into the show week after week. And then really women watching the show and then taking that to their own brunches and, conversations and talking about it with other women. And the writers even told me they loved to be out in public at, in New York City. And if they would all, hush if they heard a group of women talking about Sex in the City near them so they could hear what the women were saying. So it was this very circular conversation. And I think that that's really beautiful and indicative of why the show, when it was at its best, worked so well. This episode was written by a duo who worked together named Julie Rottenberg and Alyssa Zaritsky. It was actually their first episode, which is crazy. And the bra experience really happened to one of them. And it hadn't happened in conjunction with a mother dying, but they used that experience. And to me, this is such a great example of such a specific female experience that it would be really hard for, not impossible, but it would be really hard for a male writer to know what that was like and how that might feel and how that might fit into, this bigger idea of this episode of Miranda grieving her mother's death. Also in this episode, a huge thing, this is not what we saw in the scene, but a big part of the episode in general is how Miranda's siblings have spouses and she doesn't. And it's really her friends who end up kind of stepping up and filling that role for her at the funeral. She feels sort of left out because her siblings all have that, and they're walking up the church aisle together, and her friends kind of in this very touching moment rush to go walk up with her. I'm getting choked up now even thinking about it, which is crazy. But it really shows the show's central, message is kind of this primacy of friendship and how women can be independent and do not need men to provide them with money and lavish lifestyles, nor do they need them even for support because they have their friends. And that really was something that was pretty revolutionary at that time. It also shows how good the show was at tackling dark and difficult situations. It wasn't just all happy, fun, glamorous time all of the time. And so this was really, one of the great times that they addressed the difficulties of being a single woman, when something like your mother dying happens and all of your siblings have spouses. And that is difficult. It's hard to be single then, but she had her friends to support her in that. And now we're going to look at a clip from another episode, to me, maybe the seminal episode about making a statement about being a single woman and kind of the difficulties of that. This is from an episode called A Woman's Right to Shoes. So the shoes are here. And the premise of this is that Carrie went to a party and wore her famously glamorous and expensive shoes. And it was at a friend's place who she had been close with once, she's not as close with now. And the friend has had some kids, and she has this ironclad rule about you have to take your shoes off before you come in to the house. And then Carrie's shoes get taken, stolen, whatever. Someone takes her very expensive shoes and walks out with them. And when she goes to retrieve her own shoes, they are not there. So she has lost her very expensive shoes at the friend's house because she was forced to take them off. And this has created some strife. So we're gonna look at that now.
Hey, Carrie, what a surprise.
Well, I was in the neighborhood. I thought you might want these back.
Oh, you didn't have to return these. I had forgotten all about them.
Any news on my shoes?
No, it's weird.
So this Jennifer, Did you ever find her sandals?
What?
Well, if she took my shoes, she would have left her sandals. Just being a bit of a shoe detective here.
I haven't heard from her.
Oh,
Oh my gosh, Carrie, I am such a shit. I should have offered to pay you for them.
no, you don't have to do that.
You know, you have kids and you lose all sense of social decency. Come in.
Okay.
Milo, honey, put your trucks back for mommy.
So, how much were they?
485.
Come on, Carrie. That's insane.
Well, that's what they cost.
I'll give you $200.
Okay, this is an awkward conversation.
I'm sorry. I just think that's crazy to spend that much on shoes.
You know how much Manolas are? You used to wear Manolas.
Sure, before I had a real life. But Chuck and I have responsibilities now. Kids, houses. 485. Like, wow.
I have a real life.
No offense, Carrie, but I really don't think we should have to pay for your extravagant lifestyle. I mean, it was your choice to buy shoes that expensive.
Yes, but it wasn't my choice to take them off.
They're just shoes.
Shoes. She shoe shamed me. I left there covered in shame.
She's a fucking bitch.
But she isn't. That's the thing. She's become this whole other person. It's like she's had 2 cesareans and a lobotomy.
She owes you for those shoes.
No, it's not about the money. I don't care about the money. I'm talking about a woman's right to shoes. Why did she have to shame me?
So this, of course, is a classic of, I feel like a lot of women especially have been through this, the kind of tension. It's a great way of showing the tension between, you know, the women who are still single and the women who have had children, gotten married, and kind of that rift between those two and the tension. So one of my favorite things is how she says, you know, she can't give her $485 for the shoes because they have responsibilities now, kids, houses, multiple, but they can't handle Carrie's shoes. But you know, this was a hugely kind of liberating episode for single women who watched this show. I mean, there was like a really big outpouring of kind of like collective identification. The great ending to this episode is that Carrie decides to marry herself and then register for gifts, because she has gone to, you know, countless baby showers and weddings and wedding showers and given people all of these gifts for these, you know, choices that they made to get married and have kids. And she didn't get to have any of those gifts just because of the fact that she has so far chosen to remain single and child-free. And so she marries herself, registers for only one gift, which is that pair of shoes, and lets the friend know that her registry is available and that is what she's asking for. So it all works out beautifully. And this is one of those episodes that at the time, you know, launched a lot of discussion in and of itself about this kind of rift. And in fact, there was even just a recent New Yorker piece that was about decided not to have a baby showers. So, you know, this is an idea that's still very resonant for a lot of people. And I know I and a lot of women who watched it and who were single at the time really kind of let out a collective cheer at all of that. So I'm going to do one more. This is a scene that I kind of wanted to show for its modern relevance. This is where Carrie has taken a job writing for Vogue magazine, and she has been helped along quite a bit by this male mentor played by Ron Rivkin, who you will see shortly. So I'm going to play that now.
From my favorite editor, I finished The Impossible, my first Vogue piece. And now my favorite part of the writing process, print.
Congratulations, Cookie. 500 beautifully written words, and some of them even include the Carrie Bradshaw agenda. Cleverly hidden, of course.
It's a literary Where's Waldo.
When I finish a new piece, I usually celebrate by opening a bottle of Chateau Latour. How do you celebrate?
By buying shoes and purses.
Well, in that case, have you ever heard of the Vogue accessories closet?
It's too good. I'm sorry, but it's too good.
Just like a kid in a couture candy store.
This is too much. How can this be?
Well, designers send us things and we photograph them.
Oh my God!
Shh, Carrie.
Do you know what these are?
We're not even supposed to be in here.
Manolo Blahnik, Mary Jane's. I thought these were an urban shoe myth.
Now, if you'll excuse me, I'll be pillaging the men's side.
Okay. Oh my God. These are authentic, patent leather. And if they don't fit, so help me, I'm gonna wear them anyway. Oh. Well, they almost fit.
Carrie,
Yeah?
tell me what you think about these Versace.
Okay. All right. Oh. Oh.
What do you think?
Oh my. What are you doing?
I'm just showing you these briefs.
Well, don't. Julian, put your pants up.
Oof, look at you in those Mary Janes.
Stop. What happened to your wife, the dancer?
She's having an affair with our friend, the chiropractor. Carrie,
What?
I find you adorable.
You're old enough to be my father.
Hardly would your father wear Versace's.
Put your pants up now.
All right. But Cookie, as someone who really cares about you, let me just say, I think you have some serious issues with men.
I do right now, yes.
An older man can help you work through some of those father issues, Cookie.
Okay, don't cookie me, Freud. Pants up. Show some respect. This is Vogue. Turns out Julian had an agenda as well, but it was cleverly hidden, of course. From then on, once a month, when I went to Vogue, I thought it best to work exclusively with Enid.
All right, this new piece shows improvement, but still positively reeks of you. This magazine doesn't care what Carrie Bradshaw has to say about shoes. What does Carrie Bradshaw know about shoes?
Enid, with all due respect, men I may not know, but shoes, I know.
I'm walking.
I'm walking. I admit it's tempting to wish for the perfect boss, or the perfect parent, or the perfect outfit, but maybe the best any of us can do is not quit, play the hand we've been given, and accessorize the outfit we've got.
Okay, so that obviously, that's like one of the few actual Me Too moments in this entire show, which I think, you know, is indicative of something in and of itself. It's like that just, you know, if you're doing an equivalent show today about women in their 30s, that just wouldn't be the case. And certainly I think there would be a different ending here if we were doing this now. You know, it doesn't even occur to her, for instance, to report him or anything. She just avoids him, which is very much the way women dealt with these kinds of things before Me Too. So, you know, but it also this is kind of a prescient, you know, moment as well, that it was at least showing this and that this could happen to her at that time. So with that, I am going to open it up for questions from people. What do people want to talk about? What do you want to hear about? You can put them in the chat. I should have said that before I finished abruptly. I'm sorry about that. Anyone know? So Martha's asking if I have seen any of the new series. I actually have. I just spent the day watching the first 4 episodes, and I cannot tell you anything. I'm barely allowed to tell you that I saw it because of HBO rules, but it starts tomorrow. So, and it's HBO Max. So it actually, weirdly, I know very specifically at this moment that it launches at 3 a.m. our time on HBO Max. So if you want to get up in the middle of the night, you can be the first to watch it. But, you know, it will be available tomorrow. So I think HBO would be fine with me saying that it's good. Like, I was genuinely concerned because I feel like there's so much attention, first of all, on this. I've been doing interviews worldwide about the fact that they're doing this reboot. And I think that this is a show that is a lightning rod and was definitely like had flaws in its day. So it came in for a lot of criticism that was warranted as well. And certainly retrospective criticism, it is not in line with all the ideas we have about what should go on today. So it really, I was worried. And the movies were like not great, especially, and the second one in particular was pretty bad. So I was very nervous. And I feel like reboots often, it's like, it's better to leave it well enough alone instead of, you know, bringing it back and then making us not like it. So if it doesn't kind of meet your expectations. So I think that this was a real cultural high wire act that they took on. And from what I have seen so far, they have acquitted themselves nicely. They're doing a lot. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of new characters, a lot of old characters. I feel like that's probably all I can say without some, you know, SWAT team from HBO showing up at my door after having heard about this somehow.
Sorry about that. I had been called away, but I can let you know the reason why it's 3 p.m. our time. It's a midnight release for everything on HBO Max on the West Coast.
Right.
I usually could say you could borrow HBO Max out from the library. We have Roku kits, but they're currently suspended because there's an issue with them. Otherwise, I'd say if you don't have HBO Max, you can come check it out at the library. But hopefully, you'll be able to be available soon. You'll be able to catch up if you do not already subscribe to that streaming service.
That's cool. I didn't know that was a thing that went on. So
yeah, that is a thing that went on. There apparently some sort of issue with, but yeah, before we had Netflix, HBO, Sling TV, so they're working on trying to make that available to people. So it looks like there's some questions about why some people did not come back.
Yeah.
To the show.
Yeah.
That people have been wanting, and about how the new cast is expanded and all that, which you touched a little bit on, but.
Yeah, Dina asked, what did I think of the movies? I actually don't mind the first one, but I feel like it feels like a very long episode of Sex and the City. And it was the Steve and Miranda breakup was slightly upsetting, but that's okay. We like the emotional upsets. And, you know, that was kind of okay. But the second one was very, very bad. I can't get around that. There's no way I can say it. No other way I can say it. It was when they went to Abu Dhabi, and it really played like a caricature of itself. It sort of was playing into all the stereotypes about the show rather than the kinds of things that I was showing you today. And you know, it was just a lot of like bad puns and, you know, bad sex jokes, and poor Samantha was just going through menopause in this extremely like broad way. And it was and they were like, you know, their biggest problem was like they might have to fly home on coach. It just felt like this extreme version of them. It was very privileged. It was very sort of like white centric narrative in the Middle East. Like it was not good at all. So I think that they also saw this. I think they're aware, and they also saw this as a, kind of way to redeem themselves if they did this new series right. What is the real reason Samantha didn't join the new series? Well, I feel fine about talking about this because it's pretty out in the open. At least I can understand if people are not constantly monitoring the gossip on this stuff, but it's been pretty open at this point that there was some tension between her and the other cast members. At least she felt that way. She did not feel, as close to the other cast members as they felt to each other. She felt kind of left out. She seemed to have some particular animosity for Sarah Jessica Parker, and which she has expressed publicly, and also didn't want to come back. And I kind of do respect that. Like she has said, she only has so many years of her life left, like any of us. And this was not what she wanted to spend it doing anymore. She was tired and just was not interested in, and I have to really respect that. I can't imagine the sort of pressure she was under to do it. And, it's just the way life is sometimes. That I think about it as like, imagine if you had a job 17 years ago that, was great and life-changing, and you got through it and it was fine, and the people were okay, but you didn't necessarily love them. And then people keep begging you to come back and do that job again. And maybe you just have moved on psychologically and you don't want to go back to those people. You don't want to go back to that place. So, it was a bold decision on her part, but I can also say that, like, having watched some of the new series, they deal with that. And then like, it feels okay. Like it feels like they can move on. And it's certainly a loss because she was, incredible. And she puts the sex in Sex and the City, but they can also do it without her. Let's see what else. Kristen and Cynthia were on Colbert last night and revealed that the cast has expanded to 7 women of varied ethnicities. That's a welcome addition. I totally agree. And it's really like it's modern. Like they're dealing with those issues. They're dealing with the fact that they were so ridiculously white before. And they're not kind of doing it in a sanctimonious way. So I think that that's great. And the actresses are fantastic. All the people joining are great. My favorite who is joining is Sara Ramirez from Grey's Anatomy. They are phenomenal in this. Steal every scene, playing a gender non-binary character who is co-hosting a podcast with Carrie that's about sex. And Sara she is particularly incredible, and I love her in anything, and she is really fun to watch in this. I cannot answer the question, how would a single woman deal with that situation that we just saw Carrie in? I do not know how a current single woman would deal with that situation, but though I do think that we have more stuff in place in terms of the ways that people can report that and be taken seriously and not, and be listened to. So that is a good thing. Let's see. Someone asked how I was able to see episodes in advance, and I will answer that. It is because I am writing a review about it for the publication, The Wrap, so you can read it there tomorrow. So go to thewrap.com tomorrow, or I don't know, possibly at 3 a.m. and you should be able to see it there. Oh, somebody asked how Willie Garson's death is being addressed. It is, he's in some and then he is not, obviously, and I'm gonna not answer that. I'm under oath or something like that to HBO in terms of having seen it. I'm not supposed to talk about it until tomorrow. So I probably have already revealed too much but they do like handle it. The new series, this is actually a very important question. Oh, good, someone answered it in there, but the new series is called And Just Like That. It's not called Sex and the City. So don't look for Sex and the City, look for something called And Just Like That, ... ellipses. I think that they wanted to sort of rebrand a little bit and also maybe not have to be as sex, centric. And also maybe because of the loss of Kim Cattrall especially, it's like, well, it's not quite the same. So they rebranded as And Just Like That. Any other questions people have? We are about out of time, so that is just fine. So with that, thank you so much for all being here tonight and listening to me talk about all the sad moments on Sex and the City. And I hope that you all enjoy the reboot. I think we're supposed to call it a sequel series. I'm sorry, it's not a reboot, it's a sequel series. And I hope you all enjoy that as much as I did. I think it's going to be really fun to watch, and I can't wait till other people see it so I can discuss it with people.
Jennifer, thank you so much for sharing specific parts of the show and bringing back nostalgia for some people, and also tying it into what people might be able to start seeing tomorrow. And is there any other things you have in the works that people, other than obviously the Wrap article coming out tomorrow, that you want to share, or where they can find out anything and then follow you online?
You can find out whatever you want to know at jenniferkarmstrong.com. And I'm sure I'll be like on Twitter, JMK Armstrong. I'm sure I'll be on Twitter tweeting tomorrow once I'm allowed to talk more about it and other people are talking about it. It's really killing me. I'm like telling my partner about it, who doesn't really care because I couldn't tell anyone else. So I'm really excited to be having that big conversation because I think a lot of people will be watching it and wanting to talk about it.